We're on site with the Measured podcast at MREC 2025, filming from the RSC booth. A great opportunity to catch up with friends and colleagues, and I roped a few of them into chatting about what they're up to and how they're helping changing the industry. In this chat, I sat down with Angus Tod. Angus is vice president at Veracio, and he was on site showcasing their core scanning technology. So we talked about the difficulty in pushing through and justifying new technology to the industry, and what it takes to convince people of the value that products like these bring. Hope you get something out of this chat. Enjoy.
Yeah, we're here at the MREC conference, so there is obviously a huge discussion about quality of the models, the data that goes in it, familiar story, right? So how do we package that story up in something that really moves the needle, is what we've been discussing in the room there. And with RSC, we're firm believers in data quality. So, and again, for the record, so we're doing a few things together. So I know what you guys do, and I think it's a great value proposition. But how do you sell that to a wider market? Like, how do you demonstrate value, right? I mean, that must be the frustration of every service provider. How do you set yourself? Well, there's other people doing what you do, and so how do you make that stand out?
Yeah, I think at Veracio, and for those people that don't know, we're a core scanning company. We also have some downhole tooling, so we offer gyros and orientation tools and things like that. But where I come from primarily is the core scanning business. And what we essentially I guess selling to these clients is, as you put it, is consistent and reliable data in a fast turnaround time. We're not here claiming to replace the lab. We certainly think we can replace a number of assays on site. So there's definitely some slop that gets through, I guess, that doesn't need to be done, where an XRF analysis can be, from what we do, can definitely be used in geological modelling. But yeah, essentially what we are, I guess, competing against the lab is a really fast turnaround time on an unprepared sample, so non-destructive, directly after the drill core, that can then be used in a workflow with the geologist to really improve that geological model and a number of other value propositions. But I guess what's universal to all the different mining companies, there are some very bespoke solutions that we do for people where we definitely are offering a lot of value for a particular problem. But for all of the company out there, that real fast turnaround time, the geologist can be logging with geochemistry and potentially even a predicted log, and really nailing where those boundaries are, where the mineralisation starts, where those different domains are right from the word go. That means you're not going back looking at it. I've been talking to a resource geologist here who uses our data, and he can automatically notice straight away when it's been done by a human, those sample interval picking versus the algorithm we use from the mineralised data, the scanning data. So,
That's awesome, because intuitively it makes so much sense, right? I mean, if I go to sites either for an audit or whatever visit, and you look at the workflow, there is so much bottlenecked around these geologist logging core, and it sounds, I'm going to make a lot of enemies when I say I want to get the geologist out of the core yard. And what I mean is also probably the same thing, is you don't want to replace the lab, you don't want to replace the geologist, but I'd much rather have the geologist interpret the data than to just blindly, dogmatically log colors, with grayish white and whitish gray and all the rest of it. There must be tremendous value of moving that bottleneck. So you get all the data. The consistency must be a huge selling point, right? That consistency of data, and then allowing your geologist to actually interpret the data and make better decisions. I mean, I'm just selling it in my own head, but I mean, doesn't it sound so logical?
No.
But if it is so logical, and what pisses me off in this industry, I mean, why isn't everybody doing this? Is it just that lethargy that you see and that we talk about quite often around this sort of scope or feasibility paralysis that people get stuck in? Maybe as a question, so you probably do a pilot study of some sort, people send you core. At that point in time, once you send that proposal for the pilot study, there's some core, how many, if it's confidential, fine, but just roughly from a conversational perspective, at that point in time, does everybody just move forward because it's so logical, or do still people, half of the pilot study, say, actually, that didn't work for us?
It's a good question. We move through, I think when we get to the pilot study and get on site, we definitely progress, more times than not ahead with an on-site scanning project. There's definitely some dogmatic thoughts there around how this should be done, and that's how we've always done it.
Yeah.
And trying to overcome that has been difficult. I think as deposits are getting lower grade, deeper, I think we're really starting to see this green shoots from us about people wanting to actually employ our data in making sure this logging is correct going in. This is just my gut feel, but I feel like maybe with higher grade deposits and maybe a bit easier to mine in the past, there's been this slop that's probably allowed to get through the processing plant because they were making money no matter what. But as it's starting to tighten up, they're having to really improve these processes, and they're looking at better ways to actually make sure they get that plant running really well, and having better input in data to do those models is only going to improve that. So yeah, it's definitely, I've been involved with core scanning for 7 years, and over the last 3 years we've been getting more contacts coming to us than having to come out and chase it as well.
Good.
It's definitely starting to turn around.
Something is moving. But if because I'm interested in the reasons why people wouldn't proceed after they've done a pilot study. Like maybe just to be specific about it, because at that point the feedback must be, okay, the cost value, the cost benefit isn't quite right. It's just too expensive and our bosses don't want to. Me, the geologist, have seen all I want to see. I'm happy, but I can't get this through management. Yeah, is that the one that
definitely.
you hear?
So technically, with the technical teams, I think we definitely convince them. Yeah, completely. Right. It's the next level up that we're always trying to help build the business cases, and we definitely get that into the budgets they're going to do. But then as they get closer to using these budgets, that's when the strength comes. And I guess maybe something new that's coming on. We've already been doing it. Is maybe one of the things that they first to get rid of. And I guess one thing too, and I've already mentioned it, we're not here to replace the labs, and so that's definitely a value proposition that people come in with right from the word go. It's like, you probably aren't useful to me unless you can replace the lab for the actual JORC reporting. Exactly. So that's probably a little bit on us, teaching the market about where this kind of fits in and that there's value there. So definitely that expectation setting early on. But technically, with all the technical teams, I don't think there's too many technical teams that we've done work with that aren't come away being believers. And it might not be that budget, but definitely the next one we're trying to get into for sure.
So here you're selling into a market of people who know.
Well, definitely
love this stuff.
At the Mineral Resource Conference here, we're talking to the end users, and probably not the people that actually get to make that decision, but these are the ones that can make that difference by talking to the technical teams that are collecting this data for them to do better, I guess, and make sure they collect more consistent.
And have you got, you would have case studies all wrapped up with a beautiful ribbon around it where people can see that value as much. Do you try to express that as many of the sampling or lab people or whatever technical people try to express the value in dollars ultimately? Is that an equation that you have attempted to kind of get them to buy into?
Definitely, and we try and assist with that. We try and talk about the kind of process that we can concretely say we're replacing, because I think there's a lot of this intrinsic value that is hard to capture. Of course, you can't do this method and then go and actually retrospectively do it again and see how much dilution you prevented from having a better model that easily. It does take a lot of extra work to do that. So
it's never just click a button and all your problems are solved.
But we do have a lot of business cases and case studies where we can actually prove the data sets that we're collecting and the time saved versus the geologists and field techs that do it. Is
people can go online and
we've got some studies on our website at www.veracio.com, or they can welcome to reach out to myself and I can pass those.
Put a link in there.
There's also a really good paper done by Dr. Anthony Harris from Newmont as well. They put out around core scheme we did at Havron. In Western Australia, so in the SEG, I believe. So that should be online as well. But at one point you did mention before, Rene, about the geologists. We're not here to replace the geologists either at all. It's definitely more about collecting these fundamental data sets that the geologist is collecting more consistently, so then they can go and interpret that data and do actually geology work, with the modelling and things like that, and spend time doing that.
And that's exactly what I was saying, because the disconnect that we often see down that flow chart of work as it progresses, the data come in usually from big programs or big mines where there's lots of people working in one core yard, right? I'm talking dozens of people, tens of thousands of meters, and that there is this real, I guess bottleneck is the right word. There's a lot of data being collected, and I haven't quite. Maybe just to touch on the day one of the conference here yesterday, I think the problem that we're having as an industry now, and not to digress down a huge rabbit hole, but we are starting to collect so much data, and it's not that we don't understand what to do with it, and it's not that the software doesn't have the capacity to do it. We haven't adjusted our workflows to deal with the amount of data. That's probably the real problem. So to me, this is a workflow problem. And if you guys now collect so many more layers of data, to me that's fantastic. But now I have to charge my clients, for instance, more money because I've got much more data to look at, right? And yes, there should be a better outcome. But I don't think as an industry we've wrapped our head around that workflow, and I call it a reduction of resolution that needs to happen naturally, and it's kind of jagged. Your product has a place in that. So not to remove the geologists, they just have to change their workflows so that they have to learn how to use the data to do something more useful with. I'd much rather have a geologist in a core yard process the data and learn the skills to interpret it, and then go straight to their 3D package rather than a section, and work with the team to improve that model. So you're not extracting from the process, you're moving them somewhere else in that process to be more effective, right? So no, I think we're all saying the same thing, but we have to communicate that to our industry, otherwise we'll have another conference in 2 years and have the same questions and the same problems. Well, you've done this for 7 years, I just heard.
Yes.
Before when we were chatting.
Yep.
So what's been your key learning over 7 years?
I think coming with a problem. You did have in the early days, you had people coming with a budget and they wanted to try things out and things like that. But the jobs that have been more successful for us are people that have come with a problem that we've solved. And just off the top of my head, 3 or 4 projects here in Australia. With George Fisher, they had quite small bands of, Glencore up in Mount Isa, they had quite small bands of lead zinc, and the sampling was too broad to really capture those edges, and so having a 10 centimetre data set that we offer really could fine tune those contacts, and that was the kind of problem that we had to solve, and we did, and there's actually grown into lots of other data they're using there. Another classic one is with Fortescue here in Perth with the Pilbara, where we developed a density calculation based off of the LiDAR 3D model that could actually help with friable material and collect a consistent and reliable measurement, and that's been ongoing for a long time, and that was another kind of one problem that we can solve, but has really built a long partnership. So trying to solve those problems with the client is where it's really worked long term.
That's actually a really interesting example, because we do a lot of work in density, and that one, and we've got some data processed and looked at that, and nothing is ever as simple as it looks, but it's certainly particularly in density, where there's a lot of methods that are each one by themselves are just suboptimal. Like water immersion is just for friable, it's a complete waste of time. So so that's really interesting to have another thing roll out of that process where you go, we can use this. So good. No, this is really exciting. What's the next thing on the list for you guys? I'm
actually going to be at the GRX conference in a couple of weeks. So I'll be up there with the technology and visiting some clients up there.
You do a lot of conferences, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's right. And then, but no, I mean, I've been obviously in Africa a lot. I think there's a real need over there.
Okay.
There's a lot of technical teams over there that have management in different parts of the world, I think, and so you're collecting really consistent data on site that can then be dispersed out globally, even, or even within the continent, even. Really is beneficial for those countries over there. So
some more travel coming up.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. No, good stuff. Well, thanks for making the time, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, René. Yeah,
good luck. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks.